So, let's talk about microservices. When you hear that term, what's the first thing that comes to mind? For most of us, it's a pretty simple, straightforward idea.
It's probably this, isn't it? Microservices are just small, autonomous services. That's the textbook definition we all learned. It's neat, it's tidy, but is that really the whole picture?
Not even close. The reality is that definition is only a tiny part of the story. See, the pioneers who came up with this whole idea weren't just thinking about making things small. They were wrestling with a much, much bigger problem: how to deal with massive, incredibly complex systems. Their goal wasn't just to make services easier to maintain. No, it was to create systems where parts were easy to replace. And that shift in focus from maintaining to replacing is absolutely critical. It changes everything.
Okay, so if focusing on the individual service isn't the whole story, then why do so many microservice projects struggle? Why isn't just focusing on writing great code enough to succeed?
Well, it's because real success requires a systems approach. This means you have to zoom out. Stop looking at individual services and see the whole thing as a single, living, interconnected system. The true power of microservices only gets unlocked when you consider the entire ecosystem: the organization, the processes, and the culture that are all creating and supporting these services.
So what makes up this bigger system? Well, it starts, of course, with the service itself. This is your fundamental building block. Getting the design, the scope, and the boundaries right is essential.
But a service never lives alone, does it? It's always part of a bigger solution. This is the macro-level view, the architecture that figures out how all these individual services work together to actually deliver some value.
And that solution, well, it gets built and managed by your process and tools. This is all the machinery, your deployment pipelines, your development workflows, the automation that makes that whole easy-to-replace thing actually possible.
And who runs all these tools and follows these processes? People, within an organization. The way your teams are structured, their autonomy, how they communicate, that directly shapes the software they end up producing.
And finally, holding everything together, often invisibly, is your culture. This is the set of shared values, the beliefs, the way we do things around here that guides every single decision, a lot of times unconsciously. So, when you put it all together, what does this holistic system really look like? It looks like this: 5 interconnected elements. Think of it like one of those mobiles hanging over a baby's crib. If you poke one part, the whole thing moves and shifts. They're all connected. For instance, if you change your team's structure, that's the organization piece. I promise you, you're going to see an impact on your service design. You bring in a new tool, and it can start to change your culture. You just can't tweak one of these elements without influencing all the others. And this leads to a really critical shift in mindset, captured perfectly by this quote from D. Hawk. You don't directly control a complex system like this. You can't just command it to do what you want. Instead, you have to act more like a gardener. You don't yell at a plant to grow. You create the right conditions: good soil, water, sunlight, and then you let the desired outcomes happen naturally. You're managing the environment, not micromanaging the components. And when you create these conditions and you let all these simple parts interact, something really fascinating happens. You get what are called emergent behaviors. But what exactly are those? Let's use an analogy here. Think about a single ant. Its behavior is pretty simple, almost trivial. You can basically predict what it's going to do. But an entire ant colony? Whoa. Its behavior is intelligent, complex, and totally unpredictable. They build these sophisticated structures and solve problems that are way beyond what any single ant could do. That colony's intelligence emerges from the simple interactions of all its members. It's the exact same thing with microservices. A single service is simple, but their interactions create powerful, system-wide capabilities that are so much greater than the sum of their parts.
So this all sounds great in theory, but let's get practical. How can you actually apply this holistic view? How do you go from just managing components to, cultivating a harmonious system? It starts by really embracing this idea. The goal is not to build some perfect static system that never changes. That's a fantasy. The real goal is to build a system that is designed for continuous, safe adaptation. Your architecture should make change, that whole replaceability idea, easy, cheap, and safe, especially in the areas you know are going to be volatile. This way of thinking leads to 4 actionable mindset shifts. First, you have to see the whole system. Always zoom out from the code and look at the interactions between all 5 elements. Second, actively map those interconnections. Ask yourself, if we change our deployment process, how is that going to affect our team's autonomy?
Third, practice influencing, not controlling. Be the gardener. Nudge the system in the right direction. And finally, design for adaptability above everything else. Make change your system's greatest strength, not its biggest fear. So, I'll leave you with this question to think about. Take a look at your own work, your own teams, your own architecture, and think about it not as just a collection of parts, but as a living system. What unexpected behaviors, both good and bad, are emerging from it right now?
It's a really powerful way to see your system in a completely new light. And if this explainer helped you do that, be sure to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives. Thanks for watching.